So India has basically just hit the reboot button on its entire system of labor laws. And we're not talking about a small update here. This is the biggest overhaul in over 75 years, taking a whole century's worth of rules and squishing them into 4 new codes. The big question is this a much-needed upgrade for a modern economy or a controversial rewrite of worker rights? All right, let's get into it.
You know that feeling, right? You're trying to figure out your leave policy or how your salary is actually calculated, and it just feels like you're trying to navigate a maze in the dark. We've all been there. Okay, now take that feeling and multiply it by, well, by 29. Because that's pretty much what Indian businesses and workers have been dealing with for decades. A completely tangled web of 29 different, often overlapping and contradictory, central labor laws.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at why the old system was such a mess. Then, we'll break down the new 4-code overhaul. After that, we'll get into the new rights for workers, and then tackle that big debate about your take-home pay. We'll also see what this means for employers, and finally, look at the larger battle for the future of India's work culture.
Right. First things first, why was this massive change even necessary? Well, think of the old system like that one messy drawer everyone has at home. You know, the one stuffed with random papers, old receipts, things from totally different eras. It's disorganized, it's inefficient, and good luck finding anything you actually need.
I mean, just imagine trying to run a company where the word wage means one thing under one law and something completely different under another, and both of those laws were written before India was even independent. That was the actual reality. It wasn't just messy, it was a real roadblock to growth. And maybe most importantly, it left millions of informal and gig economy workers totally outside the system, with basically no safety net to speak of.
And that brings us to the government's big idea, a massive consolidation project. The goal was pretty simple on paper. Take that messy drawer, dump it out, and neatly organize everything into just 4 new files. And this visual just perfectly captures the whole concept. Just take a look at the Social Security Code. It took 9 separate, scattered laws covering everything from provident funds to maternity benefits and rolled them all into one single, unified framework. That's the name of the game here: simplification.
So, these are the 4 new pillars of India's labor system. First, you've got the Code on Wages, which makes a minimum wage a legal right for every single worker in the country. Then, there's the Industrial Relations Code, which is all about making hiring and firing a more straightforward process. The Code on Social Security is a real game changer, formally bringing gig workers into the safety net. And finally, the OSH Code, which creates one single standard for health and safety across every single industry.
Okay, so let's get to the really important part. What does all of this actually mean for the average person, for the employee? Let's break down some of the biggest new rights and protections coming into play.
This chart really lays out the scale of the change. I mean, think about it. Appointment letters are now mandatory for everyone. That's huge for formalizing jobs. If you're on a fixed-term contract, you're eligible for gratuity after just 1 year, not 5. The right to a minimum wage is now universal, not just for a few select industries. And this is a big one. Women can now work night shifts provided the employer guarantees their safety. That's a major cultural shift. And this might just be the most historic piece of the whole puzzle. For the very first time, Indian law officially recognizes gig and platform workers. We're talking about your food delivery drivers, your ride-sharing cabbies. The new codes actually require a social security fund to be set up for them, and the aggregators have to contribute a percentage of their turnover to it. All right, let's get to the part of this that has absolutely everyone talking: your salary. Because these new codes introduce a rule that directly changes how your pay is structured, and it's created what people are calling the take-home pay paradox. So it all comes down to something called the 50% rule. Here's how it works. The new law says that all your allowances, things like house rent allowance, travel perks, special bonuses, all of that stuff combined cannot be more than 50% of your total pay. What that does is it forces your basic pay to be at least 50% of your total compensation. Let's just walk through an example to make this real. Let's say your total package, your CTC, is 1 lakh rupees. Under the old system, a company might have set your basic pay pretty low, say 35,000. But under the new rules, that basic pay has to be at least 50,000. Now here's the kicker. Your retirement contribution, your Provident Fund, is calculated based on that basic pay. CRPF deduction jumps from 4,200 rupees all the way up to 6,000. The bottom line, you see less cash in your bank account each month. And that quote from FinShots really sums up the whole trade-off, doesn't it? It's a fantastic thing for your long-term retirement savings. That nest egg is going to grow a lot faster, but the immediate, very real impact for a lot of people will be a smaller monthly paycheck.
Okay, so while employees are wrapping their heads around their new salary slips, employers are facing a whole different set of challenges. The goal here was simplification, but right now, the transition feels more like a new kind of compliance maze.
You see, one of the biggest headaches is just the way this is all being rolled down. The central government has passed the laws, but because labor is a shared responsibility, every single state has to create its own set of rules to go with them. So, if you're a company with offices in Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, you're suddenly trying to navigate 3 different sets of rules for what was supposed to be one simple system.
And all of this brings us to our final and maybe most fundamental part of this whole story: the deep, deep division over what the future of work in India should even look like.
On one side, you have some incredibly influential industry leaders, like Narayana Murthy from Infosys, who are openly calling for a 72-hour workweek. The argument is that for India to compete on a global scale and boost productivity, the country needs to embrace a serious grind culture. But then, on the complete other side, you have the new laws themselves, which legally cap the workweek at 48 hours and demand double pay for overtime. And of course, the trade unions, who are pushing back hard against what they see as a dangerous weakening of worker protections.
And this number, 300, this is right at the heart of their protest. You see, under the old laws, any company with more than 100 workers needed government permission to do layoffs. That number has now been raised to 300. The unions argue this makes it way too easy for companies to just hire and fire, which they believe erodes job security for millions of workers.
So what we're really looking at here is a fundamental reboot of the entire system. It's this huge attempt to build a modern labor market that gives businesses more flexibility while at the same time casting a much wider social security net for workers. But as we've seen, it comes with very real and very different trade-offs for literally everyone involved.
Which leaves us with the big, hanging question at the end of all this. Are these new labor codes a visionary framework that will finally get India ready for a new economy? Or are they a dangerous rollback of rights that workers fought for decades to win? The answer is probably going to define India's workforce for generations to come.